Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome to Nightlight Part 2. This isn't an obscene episode. It might be next week, but and I'm not nervous about interviewing our now famous TV celebrity guest. I'm not running late, calling into the switchboard. I was just digging the last hole for Teresa, and I came up empty again. I'm sorry, Teresa. I'll dig another 1,715 test pits tomorrow. We have returning guests tonight, but they have new materials and exciting updates to share with us. You may remember Teresa and Dan Duke from appearances on Nightlight over the last couple of years and many other big-time shows. Dan is the author of Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure, and they co-authored The Mysterious Life and Faked Death of Jesse James, and they are working on the final installment of their trilogy of their great-great-grandfather Jesse James. Hi, Teresa and Dan. How are you?
We are good. We're really glad to be here again tonight. Thank you.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for being willing guests and providing an excellent show for us. So, Teresa, are you calling in to say you found the money from the Huntington, West Virginia heist?
I wish.
Oh, okay. And
no, I'm calling in to tell you to keep digging. Dig harder. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, like I really believe you. Okay, so and Barbara wanted me to ask about Jesse being in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. Do you have any information on that?
Goodlettsville?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, the name of the town doesn't ring a bell. Let me see. What county is that
Barbara
in?
and I want our money back.
No. According to everybody here, Jesse James and his brother vacationed here several times.
Oh,
and
near Nashville, yeah.
Near Nashville, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I know of a very large, well, it's a legend of an extremely large treasure they were involved with burying. It's supposed to be huge, I mean really big, down near Brentwood, which is about the same distance from Nashville as Goodlettsville is, only it's on the southern side. Somewhere
Okay,
down
'cause
near
I'm north
Brentwood.
Yeah, I'm north of Nashville, but they even drove me by the house, so it's definitely a part of.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just I'm sure there are plenty of people that swear that when they were showing me around and giving me the highlights, and it was like, and this is where Jesse James and his brother stayed when they were on vacation from robbing trains. So
they stayed in a lot of places, and it wouldn't shock me. I haven't heard of the name of that town yet, but I know he was in Tennessee quite often. There's some places that claim they have photos of Jesse and Frank working at a sawmill, but the photos we've seen don't match the photo, the historically accepted or our photos. So,
gotcha.
But that doesn't mean he wasn't there. It's just somebody was claiming a guy in a photo was him. But yeah, I know they were in Tennessee a lot.
Well,
and since if you're close to Goodlettsville, you should maybe start hanging around Brentwood.
I live in Goodlettsville.
Yeah, they say that, it was near a coal mine or something down there, Brentwood. I'm not sure if it was a coal mine. It was some type of mine down there, Brentwood, and it was supposed to be near that. That's all I know.
Check it out.
And it's supposed to be very deep in a lot of tunnels and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'm going underground
that's the legend.
for sure.
Yeah, and you know how legends go. I mean, it may not be. Usually, as the years go on, the treasure legends get, the treasures get larger and deeper. So there's a lot of legends, but usually there's a grain of truth to them.
I was checking the where the heists happened, and Barbarastown isn't mentioned. But that would be different.
Well, usually if they were vacationing there, they usually wouldn't touch it. Kind of like a lot of mafia.
Mm-hmm.
If they were hiding out in an area, they made sure nothing was, they minded their manners while they were there because they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. And there was they probably knew a lot of influential people around Nashville who they didn't want to upset too bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that explains why Goodlettsville isn't mentioned in your list of places where the robberies happened, since they were just there on vacation.
Yeah. Well, and another point, there's a lot of things that history never mentioned that we wouldn't have known if we hadn't have read it in his journals. So, like, for example, places in Louisiana and people he stayed with, like Gervais Fontenot, who was the nephew of Jean Lafitte, the famous pirate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, nobody would have known that if we wouldn't have found it in his diaries. So it's pretty interesting. And I'd love to know every detail of his life, and maybe one day we will.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that over the next hour and 50 minutes. I just want to start off with your appearance on the History Channel's America's Book of Secrets, Season 4, Episode 3, and it's entitled Freemason Factor, and you provided some Civil War era insights. It's a transitionary period for American Masonic organizations. I thought it was really a fantastic episode, and you and the other commentators did an excellent job of recreating post-Civil War America, Masonic history, some of the artwork, and maybe later on we can get in a couple questions I developed after watching the episode some of the customs, like showing George Washington sprinkling some grain and oil on a cornerstone, and Lynn Picknett was very informative too. And she was a guest with Barbara a couple of years ago. So give us some of the behind the scenes stuff. Like, how do you get approached to be a commentator on for an episode? Just kind of what are some of the behind the scenes stories that went along with getting there, then doing the shoot, and then the wait till it actually airs.
Okay. I was. Well, they had contacted my agent, Fiona Spencer Thomas, and I always get that last name mixed up. Anyway, they contacted my agent, Fiona, and she set it up. She was the middleman between us, and she told me, yeah, if you'd like to do this, they'll fly you out to Hollywood and interview you. And it was, during the middle of COVID, so I was excited, but it was kind of a bummer because I didn't get to see a lot of places I would have loved to have seen in Hollywood. But so I, flew out to Hollywood. TSA took my hair gel from me in Denver, so that was interesting. And then, but I thought, okay, it's for safety. But anyway, so I gave them my hair gel and made it to California and came back. But when I was there, they put me up in a hotel, and that was fun. It was just the Bob Hope Airport, just people you've heard of. When I was a kid, I'd hear the name Bob Hope and, see old shows and stuff. It was really cool. And, but yeah, the interview went great. They wanted to know about the book. They talked to me for about an hour, and in a historic home in, what's the name? It was on the name of the town. It slips my mind. It's a little part of L.A., but there was a historic home they rented, and they interviewed me there, and just the history there was interesting. But then I packed up and flew back home right after the interview. And Hollywood was pretty much just because of COVID. Everybody was there, of course. They were all just in their homes and not moving.
So how long did it take to do the shoot?
It took about, the shoot, from the moment I got there, after I signed the I don't have COVID release and all that, it took about an hour. They interviewed me for about an hour, and then we talked a little bit, and then I was on my way home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was real quick.
That was quick.
They had everything set up and ready when I got there, I think, and they were extremely busy. They had, I think it was 3 or 4 more people there to interview, and then they had to fly to Northern California and interview some more. They interviewed a lot, like half a dozen people that day, and just getting everything right and the lighting and everything, for the set. I'm sure that was a lot of work. So my hat's off to them for all the work they do and put into it. And then, of course, they had to fly to other states to interview the other guests on the show, like Arturo de Hoyos and the others.
Mm-hmm. Lance Reddick does a great job hosting, and he has a excellent voice for being a narrator. Was he on the set too?
He wasn't on the set. The producer was there, and everybody else, but she had to. They were extremely. What they had done. Usually, I believe he may have been there. She told me it was completely different because of COVID. Everything they were doing was, it was almost like a new territory for them as well. They were trying to cut the amount of exposure that everyone had to everyone else, and COVID put a big damper on a lot of things, but it turned out great.
Mm-hmm. It really was a well done episode. I enjoyed
agree.
it.
You know, I was worried about that. I thought, God, I hope you know, all the different little things people, I hope I did my hair right, I hope this, hope that, and very nice, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And let's look at, a few of the highlights that were brought up by you and some of the other commentators. You were discussing, like the Civil War era, and what Reconstruction time period, and you're talking a little bit about the Knights of the Golden Circle in relation to Masonic history. So, you do touch on it in both of your books. What was Jesse's involvement with a fraternal organization? How was the Knights of the Golden Circle a little different than just the regular Freemason fraternity? Copper, put in the Copperheads as well. That they seem somewhat related to. You can kind of go with those general type questions.
Okay, well, there's no, first off, right off the bat, there's no proof, no known proof that Jesse was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. And there's no known proof that Albert Pike was a member either. A lot of people like to lump them in there. And, and even people who were members of that group may have liked lumping them in, just, well-known characters. Well, Jesse back in the day was known as a hero to half the country. So, he would have, I'm sure they would have liked adding his name to the list too. Kind of like happens with other secret societies throughout history. People like to lump in, famous people's names. It adds an air of legitimacy to their group. And I don't know if he was a member or not. I've never found any proof. And, you get people going, well, my grandfather said, well, does your grandfather have proof? That's what you need, is proof on paper, and these days especially, you can't just go by word of mouth. You have to find the proof. So I haven't found that proof yet. But there are interesting coincidences, like the James Gang hit a bank in Accobock, Corydon, Iowa. It was the Accobock Brothers Bank in Corydon, Iowa. And the interesting part of that, they wrote, before they hit the bank, there was a controversy in that little town. A railroad wanted to come through, and a famous Copperhead politician, Henry Clay Dean, he was for the railroad coming through, and so he was the most of the town wanted it because it would have brought more business to the town. But the Accobock brothers, who owned the bank in town and controlled, they were the big guys, the money men in that small town. They were against it, so they weren't throwing any money towards supporting this railroad. So the day of the robbery, coincidentally, Henry Clay Dean, he was a well-known speaker, orator, he was on one side of the town, the opposite end of the town, giving this speech. And they said back in the day, people would ride 50 miles to see him speak. And, 50 miles today is just a few minutes drive, but back then that was a long journey. And so people across the country came from miles around to hear him speak. The whole town and everybody in the town was on that far end of town listening to his speech. So the James boys rode into town, walked in the bank, robbed it easily, got out, got back on their horses, and as they were riding, instead of going the way they came in, they sauntered by the crowd and said, somebody just robbed your bank. And And people turned around and hushed them because they wanted to hear the speech. And they rode on laughing. And, before the posse knew that, realized there actually was a bank robbery, they were long gone. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, there's no proof, but you could see very easily how, well, Henry Clay Dean being a copperhead, he supported the South. The James Gang wrote for, a Southern guerrilla group before they were outlaws. So you can piece that together fairly easily. And it doesn't take a long stretch of imagination to make one wonder if Henry Clay Dean wasn't serving as a decoy to hit the bank because they wouldn't support the railroad that they wanted through there. And it just seems a little coincidental to me. But they after that robbery, they went and disappeared out west, and Jesse and some of the gang came down through Texas.
Okay, and that's where they got away with between $6,000 and $70,000.
Yeah, it was always interesting on that big gap in how much they got away with. I always get a kick out of that. Between $6,000 and $70,000, and that's a big difference, especially back then when dollars were oftentimes gold or backed by gold.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and let's see. And during the your segment on the show, they or the History Channel was using had made colorized photos of obviously black and white photos for many of the accompanying pictures to go with what you or one of the other commentators was discussing. So, Teresa, did you submit those photos? You get the a nice profile of Jesse. There was one of the funeral ones which was different from one in the in your fake death book. Did the colorized photos from the episode cause you to see something different, bring some new type of insight to you?
Well, it didn't really bring any new insight. I know when we had some of the photos examined with the forensic analyst, that brought a lot of insight because they had some equipment where they could enlarge and zoom in at a greater level than, just looking at it with your, just your eyes, your normal eyes. And there were, it showed things on the faces and comparisons that we were never able to see with the naked eye. Like one, for example, it was the picture of the most famous picture, the one that's of Jesse James, that all the historians accept James, compared to one of the one that we compared in the book alongside it. It showed scars that you can't see with the naked eye. When you zoomed in on their equipment, you could see scar of this deep crevice along the jawline on both of the pictures. And that blew us away because we never even could see that just, with the naked eye. And then that brought in a whole new level of excitement and insight, like, wow, how many people have a scar just like that in the identical spot? and it was just really exciting. So yeah, there were things that we could see. I mean, that we couldn't see that the forensic analysts could bring out with their advanced, equipment, and it was really exciting.
Okay, and the black and white photo is on the cover of Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure, right?
Yes.
That's the same one.
Wait,
okay.
wait. Let's see. Yeah, that black and white photo. Yep. For some reason, I had the funeral photo in my mind, and that was the second look.
Too.
Yeah, and how is people watch that episode? What's the difference between that photo and the few examples in your book?
The difference between the most famous photo and the examples in our book?
Yeah,
Okay.
where like what Jesse is attending his own funeral with where you believe Woodhite is the person actually in the coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're different photos. It was just interesting.
Yeah. Which photos were different, you mean?
There's the one in your The Mysterious Life and Fake Death is a different photo of someone in a coffin than what's in the TV episode.
Yeah, And now I get what you mean. The most famous photo of him in a coffin, it wasn't him actually, but the one they claimed was him, they are two different men. The guy who was dead in the coffin and the guy who's in the funeral photo don't look alike. And, we were laughing about that. It's like, how could people just accepted it for some reason. I guess it's kind of like today. A lot of times you can hear something on the TV and people accept it. And then later on you find out it's fake or false information, and people sometimes get mad, but they blow it off and they fall for the same type of thing later, right, shortly after that. And it just, we were wondering about that, but people took people's word for it. And then again, nobody really knew what he looked like to begin with, other than his family and his gang members, who were also his good friends. So there wasn't really anybody to say yes or no, that is or isn't him, which was, so nobody really had a chance other than to accept it. And then when you find out he was related by blood to the governor and several of the other people involved in allegedly pursuing him, it makes things a lot clearer on how they kept things. It wasn't just his gang and his family. The governor at the time was his relative, as well as some of the other law enforcement. It was an interesting story, but the differences in there, we believe, and that's where we believe, it's our theory, that the guy in the casket in the most famous photo, the death photo of Jesse is what they claim. We believe that was the farmhand who died, and his name was Jim Gibson, and he was a farmhand. After he was killed, people didn't know he was killed for a long time, but a lot of people you just can't find him anywhere. He's disappeared from the pages of history, and we know why, because he was dead. But they buried him in a shallow grave, and then Woodhite was killed in the same fight. And we believe Bob and Charlie Ford shot him. There was a huge gunfight right there in the house. And Woodhite killed Jim Gibson, and Bob and Charlie shot Woodhite. And, it's, I guess, a gunfight. I can only imagine it would be insane being in the middle of a gunfight. Tempers flared, everybody ready to draw anyway. So But yeah, Jim Gibson, we believe, is the guy in the famous death photo, and then that's Wood Height at the funeral.
Okay. Well,
and to this day, no one can locate the grave of Wood Height either. They claim his body was sent back to his home in Kentucky. There's no grave. There's no mention of a funeral for him. There's nothing. And no one can, our detractors used to say, oh, we know he died this, on this date, and well, show us a grave, and nobody could find a grave or produce one.
Okay, and the beards and face look different between the photo of the coffin in the house and at the graveside.
Mm-hmm.
Those just don't seem to match up. And I think when you two were with us last summer, according to legend, that Jesse was shot in the back of the head in 1882, and there is no exit wound in either of the photos.
Yeah. Yet they claimed there was a hole in the wall at the house where he was allegedly killed in St. Joseph, Missouri. We had been there, and you get no part of their stories ever matched. People were saying there had to have been an exit wound because there's a hole in the wall. And then we found out from one of the elderly gentlemen whose parents owned that house and, would charge tourists a quarter or whatever to come through and view the house. One of the guys who owned it before them would pour chicken blood on the floor and say, look, there's pieces of, and he would sell splinters with chicken blood on it, telling people it was Jesse's blood on the floor. And, they had this hole they showed off, not to mention the fact that the ceiling was extremely low, and a child wouldn't have needed to get on a chair. The story was he stood up on a chair and he was dusting the photo, and people just accepted it. But if you see the room where it happened, or is said to have happened, the ceiling is so low you don't need a chair. I mean, a child wouldn't need a chair to dust a photo in that room. It was just the whole story their story just fell apart.
Yeah, I think I can't remember, what was the name of the person who did the ballistics test proving that there was no exit wound?
There was a lady, there was a firearms expert in New Mexico, and there was even a documentary with her on there. She said the way that the entire killing was explained in the history books and, documented back then in the newspapers, it couldn't have happened that way. She said if somebody would have shot somebody at point-blank range with a .44, it would have blown the guy's head off. He wouldn't have a face.
Mm-hmm.
And yet in the funeral, in the death photos, both men have, their faces don't look distorted or mangled in any way.
Right.
But yet they still use that as a tourist site about the bullet hole. Like they still push that story, even though it's been proven.
So, okay, well, the episode did mention that it was your Teresa and your theories that Jesse did was not killed in 1882, and he would live but about 60 some more years later. So there is they do touch on just due to time constraints they couldn't develop the whole scenario, but they do indirectly mention the thesis of your faked death book.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other point on that is, if they had had time and actually planned it, it also goes to show that they didn't plan to kill Jesse's first cousin, Wood Height. It was a spur of the moment thing. Wood Height got in a fight with Jim Gibson, the farmhand. They were involved in the love triangle with Bob and Charlie Ford's sister, Martha Bolton. There was a shootout. Both of those guys died, and Wood Height bore a very strong resemblance to Jesse, so they passed him off as the body of Jesse. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing, and in that light, they did a real good job of pulling it off. I mean, that was hats off to them. So it was the problem came when you find the truth and people don't want to accept the truth because of various reasons, their ego, money, things like that. I remember when we came out with it, our mother came out with the truth in the late 90s, and we thought they would be happy to hear that he wasn't killed by Bob and Charlie Ford. And that was the last thing they wanted to hear. They just they didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to hear it. And when Mom wrote her book, they started just screaming louder until it led to death threats on her second book.
Oh, and just to back up, I remembered the lady who did the ballistics test. Her name was Katerina Babcock. She was a firearms expert from New Mexico, and she came out. I think it was on a Discovery Channel, but she came out and said that the bullet would have been a lot larger. The wounds would have been larger from the pistols they claimed that they shot him with. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Her name came to me. Sorry.
No, it's just that adds more detail to the show. Oh yeah, that's fine. And Daniel, you were also provided commentary on the Saddle Ridge Horde. And
they had asked me about that, and I don't know if that was Jesse or an allied group, connected with Jesse. I don't even know if it was a robbery. I asked them, I told them I'd have to know more about the exact location of where it was, and then I could tell them more. But it sounded like it fit those. It fell in line with a lot of the other legends that involved Jesse. And I know Jesse and Frank had been out to California several times just because one of their uncles lived in California at Paso Robles, California. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But he had a home out. He lived out there, and they would visit him often.
I think that house is actually up for sale too. Are you talking about the ranch, Danny, the Paso Robles Ranch?
Yeah.
That ranch is actually up for sale. I know it was like last year, and no one's bought it, of course, but I thought that was interesting. I wish I had the money, I'd buy it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it was the ranch where Jesse's uncle lived. It's up for sale, and I would love to buy it.
Well, hopefully we can get a few more book sales right after the show, and just contact Amazon and get or Inner Traditions and get your books. There we go. Teresa needs a new house.
It's listed for $38 million in California.
Well, okay, we'll need a few more.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you the link, Mark Eddy, so you can look at it. It's really pretty, though. But, yeah, $38 million, that's a lot.
For $38 million, I hope it was it had a nice view, quality house.
Yeah, oh yeah, it looks nice. It looks like it's still really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, it's, wow. Okay, so that, very impressive.
Yeah.
Cool, okay. Yeah, so let's help Teresa get this house.
I know, right?
And there's, but
maybe we can start a GoFundMe page.
There you go.
That seems to be the way that everyone else does it these days. Help Teresa, GoFundMe.
but the dates on the Saddle Ridge Horde would fall into being contemporary with Jesse's bank robbing days, and after. But if this, the Knights of the Golden Circle were interested in forming their, keeping the Confederacy going, after the Civil War, they just needed more time and money to, make their split from the Union. The dates on all the coins are contemporary with Jesse's nefarious activity dates, plus a little later. So there is what we call it, like circumstantial evidence that he could have been to California, like Teresa said.
Yeah. That, or it could have been one of the allied, their allied group. There were a lot of outlaws in California too. So it could have been Jesse or someone associated with him,
or later generations who were hoping to pull off the Southern secession. So
now when people claim, people like I mentioned earlier, they like to lump Jesse and Albert Pike and others in with that group. And there's no proof that they were. It wouldn't shock me if they were in part of that group. I mean, they were a Southern group, and that's the side they fought for. But when people start talking about, the goals of the Knights of the Golden Circle, they wanted to continue slavery and take over large portions of, they wanted to take Central America and I think the entirety of northern South America and have Havana, Cuba as their headquarters. So, that was their goal, the stated goal or alleged goal. The thing, you can't find documents or records of any of their meetings, so it's just it's a claim, really. There's no proof. But when they try to lump Jesse and Albert Pike and others in there, you just have to remember there's no proof. And I know there's proof that, of course, that Albert Pike was a Freemason. There's proof that Jesse was a Freemason. So it makes you wonder, if they weren't in the Knights of the Golden Circle, could that have been a Masonic effort to help foil the KGC's plan? Could they have been a part of that? And it wouldn't shock me, because a lot of Quantrill's guerrillas, after the Civil War, if they had hated America as much as people claimed they did, why would they have tried to volunteer in World War I, the living ones, the ones that were still living, tried to volunteer to go over and fight the Kaiser in Germany? I thought that was interesting. If they were so set against the United States, why would they bother trying to fight for them?
Okay, that makes sense. But I thought it was interesting that the secession idea was brought up during the show because roughly 60-some years earlier, Aaron Burr tried to do that with Harmon Blennerhassett, about 80 miles south of me. It's just kind of like one of those like local legends. But there has been this occasionally reoccurring effort to leave America and form another country. In Knights of the Golden Circles, seems like it was kind of following like this plan that Aaron Burr had, and it was interesting that after the Civil War, it was being considered trying it again. But I think Burr was hoping to go to Mexico. Oh, where's the page? Burr's triumvirate was also beguiled by Mexico, which most Americans then imagined as an El Dorado of riches, groaning under the lash of Spanish oppression. According to a friend, Burr ardently advocated bringing freedom to Mexico and its silver mines, which were producing two-thirds of the world's silver output. I thought that was interesting, like, all the silver and gold, the minerals from Mexico. It's just been this lure, an allure to other people wanting to try their own empire.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know, well, and that goes back to, like, the Vatican had a vested interest in a lot of the silver. I mean, for how long had the Spanish taken silver from Mexico, silver and gold from Mexico, and sent it to Spain, who were, the Spanish were controlled by the Vatican for all intents. I mean, they were. It just makes me wonder, behind the scenes, who was causing a lot of the strife throughout the centuries in Mexico. And then with the KGC and their plan, their stated goals. Of course, I say stated. You never hear it from them. It was always from someone claiming it was them, that was their goal.
Yeah. We got some background there on the Knights of the Golden Circle, and people, after the show, people can go to the History Channel and watch for a little bit more detail. But we got enough to kind of go into another stay on the subject of the TV show, but we can take it in other directions. So, but you do have in both your books and several other recent guests have also discussed the New Atlantis, and what's in the TV show says that things, the fraternal organizations had started to change by the Civil War, and from like the 1620s when Bacon published his the New Atlantis until 1860. That's 240 some years. like the Knights of the Golden Circle had gotten away from Bacon's vision of the new world. And Dan, both of you cover Bacon in the books, more so in Lost Templar Treasure. But what was the importance of Bacon's work as like a founding philosophy of modern Freemasonry?
Yeah, a lot of people say, some people claim that's a theory, and then other people say no, it's a fact that he was one of the founders or the founder of Freemasonry. And if even if it wasn't him alone, it was a group, he was involved with it. It was a group of like-minded people who got together and decided to form, Freemasonry. The Rosicrucians were also involved. Those are closely allied groups. And a lot of Freemasons were Rosicrucians and vice versa. But their main goal, throughout the centuries when Rome, the Vatican controlled a lot of just about everything in the Western world. And if you spoke your mind, said the world was round, things like that, you could lose your head. So there was very little liberty, very little freedom of thought. And if you did think something, you better keep it to yourself, or that could be it. So
like Galileo.
And it held everybody back. I mean, it held society as a whole back, which was what was so cool about the Renaissance period, the Great Enlightenment. They started breaking away from that slowly, and there was a lot of struggle mixed throughout the centuries there, especially all throughout Europe. But they their goal was to have a place. They knew of America, according to a lot of different historians and researchers. People knew of it. The Vikings more than likely knew about it. If you watch, Scott Wolter's, it was America Unearthed, the show he had for several years. He presented a lot of evidence about the Vikings having been here, and others have done the same. So it was pretty. I'd say it's a safe bet. They knew about the New World. They thought that's our perfect opportunity, and it wasn't just Freemasons and Rosicrucians. There were a lot of people who were just dying to get out and find a place that was free, and literally dying. Just a place where they could have freedom of religion and just any shred of liberty, because at the time they didn't have much. So that was, I believe, the impetus to bring the treasures over. And if you're going to form a new country, you're going to need some kind of financial backing. And the treasures the Templar had that had disappeared, I believe, were buried here. And when they came over, people knew they wouldn't just bury it and walk away. They had to have let somebody know. So that, to make a long story short, I think they brought the treasures over. The Freemasons and the Rosicrucians got an early foothold in America and took care. I think they were the overseers of the treasures and other information.
They wanted to use a lot of their knowledge. Oh, sorry, Danny.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. They wanted, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're the Mason. But, from my understanding, just a little bit of research I did on Bacon, they wanted to apply what was considered the ancient knowledge. They felt like it was lost throughout time, and they wanted to use it to better mankind with kind of resurface that knowledge to, improve, all aspects of life, medicine, agriculture, engineering, and they felt like it was lost throughout time, and they wanted it, to bring back that knowledge. Was I wrong, Danny? I don't know.
No, that sounds perfect.
You know more about it than I do.
To empower mankind so that they can attain their next rightful state.
Yeah. So all these
whereby
people have
God,
in their head,
a
a lot of people have in their head that these societies are like dark, secretive, cults that have like sinister intentions. But there's also the other side where, a lot of people know that they were, you can look at it like either way. Their intentions were, in their head, they wanted to better mankind. And kind of like Elon Musk, like what he's wanting to do. He's wanting to improve the world and better things, and that's what they were doing. And a lot of times when people try to bring that that kind of knowledge forward and, make better changes, it's always kind of, they get attacked, and people want to place them in these little categories like they're sinister and, shady and secretive, and I don't know. It just...
Well, Bacon did write, the speaker, instituting that house for the finding out of the true nature of all things, whereby God might have the more glory in the workmanship of them.
Yes. And in the New Atlantis.
Correct.
And I view that book as a template for what they at least hoped America would be.
And there's like non-GMO foods in there, but
yeah.
That's awesome.
We'll try. We'll do a fourth show on that. No, it's in there.
That's awesome.
But the whole is basically a fantasy island. It was set up as a college, like a college campus, and
well, like the ship of the men who sailed there, where they ended up there in their ship. I was always interested in, I guess that was Francis Bacon's immigration policy was, we'll help you make sure you're well stocked. If you need medical attention, we'll cure you and then, stock you up and you can be on your way. And that I thought that was interesting. But they had institutions for learning and, just the whole thing. It sounded like a great utopia, a utopia. And I believe that was the intended goal for what America was meant to be, or at least something along those lines.
Right. And I think that was one of the interesting aspects of your appearance on the show. And your section was touching on, and it's also in throughout your first book is Bacon's vision, and roughly 250 years later, the Knights of the Golden Circle were discussed as being darker, and it was interesting information to contrast the two philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is interesting.
Since we're you mentioned the Templars and the travel, like bringing treasures to the New World. There is that Shepherds of Arcadia painting
Mm-hmm.
And you do cover that. We've had Bill Mann as a guest. He goes into a lot of detail about the importance of that painting. That it says something about the original Templars. Kind of like pushing the boundaries where they had to, for their own survival, they had to leave Europe. Scott Walter talks about the Kensington runestone, and that was carved in 1362 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
You get the Sinclair voyage. How some of the English or British sailors went to stayed in Canada, and they kind of kept the secrets by marrying into the native families here, and like Oak Island's secrets are, the treasure is removed, but no one knows where the secret is now kept.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just interesting how after that 1307 attack, you get Scott State, on the Kensington runestone, the Sinclair voyages. The exchange of information, going back and forth. Have you gotten into Rosslyn Chapel? You kind of cover it a little bit in the Lost Templar Treasure. That's like kind of like getting into that Da Vinci Code stuff, where it's it's some really fascinating history.
It is. I mean,
me and Danny had planned. We wanted to visit that last summer. We had plans to visit that chapel, and then COVID hit. So hopefully we can resume that plan now. Since things.
I hope you get there.
I did too.
I'm not that big. I could probably fit in your suitcase.
I would make sure you could go on.
But, well, just the carvings alone in the Rosslyn Chapel, some of the carvings of plants that were unidentified for ages until someone noticed their exact, down to the fine detail. There are replicas or carvings of plants that are found here in North America, and they don't grow any other place. They're just here in America. I think one was a trefoil. I can't remember the name of the plant, the complete name, but and corn, for example, maize. It only grew here. It wasn't there back then. So, that alone is a deep mystery. And then, not to mention a lot of the other carvings, people have theorized that a lot of them detail frequencies, cymatics, I believe is what you call it. It was when sound vibrates on a plate, the sand, if you pour sand on it, it'll make a certain shape. And they were saying that it was, and somebody even made a piece of music patterned after the symbols on the ceiling. I thought that, and it was beautiful music. But Lewis Buff Perry, who is cryptologist. He's a very good code breaker. There was a documentary with him I saw years ago. He was talking about the pillow stone of Jacob, and claimed that it had been placed in Rosslyn Chapel and then taken from Rosslyn Chapel and was found by the Lavandry. I can't pronounce that name to save my life. The Lavandry party. It was a group of French explorers who found it in a sandstone pillar in Canada, and then it ended up in Jesuit hands, and the Jesuits were bringing it back. The man who ended up building, I'm starting, some of these names are slipping my mind right now, but it was that the Jesuit ships were intercepted by a British naval officer, and he caught I believe it was half the ships he captured and brought them back. They were full of riches, but the important part in that story was that it included the pillow stone of Jacob, or the alleged pillow stone of Jacob, and it made its way all the way back to the UK, and it was
cymatics,
very
is that
interesting
what it was,
story.
Danny?
Cymatics, yes.
Yeah, cymatics.
But yeah, it was a very interesting story alone. Just with Rosslyn Chapel is full of a multitude of mysteries, and I love getting into it.
Oh yeah. So one day, I hope we can go there.
Yeah.
Hope it's sometime soon, then you can go to the Amalfi Coast.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's number one on the list.
Yeah.
Beach
but no,
first, always.
mentioning the New Atlantis, it it was like the city, the utopic city or nation that he had mentioned was like shined like a light to the rest of the world, and that reminded me of the Sermon on the Mount in the New Testament of the Christian Bible, and also Governor John Winthrop of the Massachusetts Bay Colony had quoted that when they first came over in 1620 or 1630. When they came over in 1630 with colonists, John Winthrop gave his famous, like a city on a hill shining its light to the rest of the world speech, which was based after all of those. There's a lot of little things that carry on. And I thought, well, maybe he was getting that from the Bible and didn't know, maybe it wasn't connected to Francis Bacon, until I found out that his son, who was a governor south of him, later on was a governor. He had a correspondent. He was a big fan of John Dee, and John Dee was the famous alchemist who was also the mentor of Francis Bacon. And then when you're talking about John Dee, the Newport Tower in Rhode Island also falls into the story, because a lot of people claim that John Dee had that built, because it's a fact that he wanted to start a colony here in America. And they it's all these people seem to they're all connected in different ways, and it seems to lead back to Bacon, and then from Bacon back to the Templar. And when you're talking about all of those people and groups, you can't help but mention Rosicrucians, alchemists, the Freemasons, and others. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and you also were Bacon writes about other books in the New Testament which were not at that time written, but nevertheless in the book. And you also we were also talking about Bacon also had a hand in the writing of or the translation of the King James Version.
Yeah, that's true.
So what if he's just publicly stating that he's aware of other books not included in the New Testament, and I think a couple like Rob Sullivan or someone said that like the Book of Enoch kind of had disappeared for 1,500 years and it wasn't rediscovered until after Bacon's maybe approaching 100 years after Bacon's time. What did he know that in the 1620s that we're just figuring out now?
Yeah, and what
you
did he pass on to others?
And you can see where his being island would be set up as a college.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense to me. And, when you're talking about Bacon, it always reminds me also of Marie Bauer Hall. She was the wife of Manly Palmer Hall, famous 33rd degree Mason. Marie Bauer Hall's book, America, no, it wasn't America Unearthed. It was something unearthed. I can't remember the name of the title. I just said it the other day. Sorry about that. It's like my mind's slipping me tonight. Foundations Unearthed. That was the title of her book. She had mentioned, after she cracked the codes and ciphers that she had found in the works of Shakespeare, which she claimed, and many others have throughout the years, that Francis Bacon was actually the main author of. Even Mark Twain had thrown in his hat in that argument, and he claimed Shakespeare couldn't have done it. It was Bacon and his peers. But anyway, she had found ciphers in the works of Shakespeare, connected those to Williamsburg, Virginia, and found the original foundations of a church, the Bruton Parish Church. And people had, the experts of the day had ridiculed her. They thought she's crazy. There aren't any original foundations in existence because there weren't any. But she proved them wrong. She found the original foundations. And she went further, and she also used anagrams on some of the tombstones in the graveyard at the church, and located a vault that was, she said, I believe it was 22 feet beneath the original foundations of the church. And she started to excavate, and then she was put to a stop real quick. But make a long story short, she claimed in that vault, she truly believed there was information that would shake the pillars of Western history, along with a lot of our religious beliefs. And she had, which makes me wonder, were some of those lost books that you were mentioning deposited, or copies of them anyway, deposited in that vault?
Very interesting.
Yeah, and she was put to a stop. They stopped the excavation. She tried to continue, and they basically ran her out of town and wouldn't allow her. They haven't allowed anyone to search for that since then, at least publicly. Which I thought was interesting. I mean, she proved them wrong on one thing, so I'd say the odds of her being right on the vault increased tremendously.
Okay, and you wrote that she uncovered that in 1938.
I believe, yeah.
And the vault was 20 feet below the original foundations.
Yeah, I don't know why I said 22. That number's been popping up with me a lot lately. And that's a whole different side story. Sorry about that.
You have more information on the vault on page 22.
Yeah, that's why. Thank you. Anyway, that's probably a whole nother show. Why do certain numbers pop up constantly? But that's been happening to me all week. That and 333 keeps popping up every time.
And 38 million.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Now that'll be pop. That's Teresa's number.
Go find me. No, I'm joking.
With all the education that we've been discussing, from Bacon, Templars, what this information with which they returned to Europe after being in the Holy Land, that kind of stuff. Some of the artwork we've discussed. Show you the Freemason factor. Also discussed Prince Hall, and that was a really interesting
I thought
section.
So too.
That was really well done, and the several commentators who provide some really detailed commentary. Really showed that he in this what's like 1770s, Prince Hall actually was really a pioneer in civil rights movements.
Yeah.
Do you two want to talk a little bit about his importance and why he deserved to have such a lengthy section in that episode?
I think it could be boiled down to he was extremely important. He was also a prominent citizen in Boston at the time. But in 1784, when he founded the Prince Hall Lodge, at first, it was met with backlash from people in Boston and other places. But what I always found interesting was it just falls in line. Everything he strived for fell in line with the goals of Freemasonry. And that's probably what drew him to Freemasonry as well. The goals are very noble, and it's up to every person to try to attain those goals, to be honorable and tell the truth, don't discriminate against people. That's a big goal. Just get along, basically.
And just the fact that he established that during those times and was successful with it just, is amazing in itself. He had a lot of roadblocks, I'm sure, So, I mean, it was just a huge accomplishment.
And he couldn't get a charter here in the States for a lodge. And I really admired that he went to England and got a chart. Well, he contacted the Grand Lodge of England, and they granted a charter to it. And I thought that was that was amazing. It meant to be.
Oh yeah. And I was also surprised. For me to find out, I wasn't aware of this. I'm sure Danny was, but I wasn't. But I thought it was interesting that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to, become a Mason. I never knew that, and I thought that was really cool.
And he was assassinated, I believe, shortly before he was initiated.
Yeah.
Or supposed to be initiated. And that also brings up another thing. Benjamin Franklin, for example. He was a famous Freemason, one of the founding fathers, and he was responsible for pushing through and forming a school for black children in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I thought, that just fell in line. Everything Prince Hall fought for, it fell in line with Masonry, basically. I mean, I know people, and those were different times, but at the same time, he didn't let the obstacles before him stop him. And he did it in a peaceable manner, which is it just falls in line perfectly with Freemasonry. I'm glad they continue that.
Mhm.
And during this show, they had spoken about really, I forget which commentator it was. It point really doesn't make any difference. If you're, what race you are and nationality, the faith, that you're just considered a brother in the fraternal organization, and that idea can go back, or we have some other another example from the second half of the 18th century with from our friend Dr. Bob Hieronymus and Laura Kortner's Founding Fathers Secret Societies book, and I found an example of the Mohawk War Chief Joseph Brant. Went to England, and later on at the Battle of Cedars during the Revolutionary War. I guess it must have been on the border with in Canada. It was along the St. Lawrence River. Who's the guy? There's some colonel. Colonel John McKinstry. He was the colonel was captured, and I guess he was trying to save his own life, and I guess he made some attempt to make a Masonic sign, and Chief Joseph Brant recognized it and saved him from being burned at the stake. So it shows like the brotherhood is recognized across various cultures.
Yeah, that's another thing that amazes me, the fact that, well, there was a time in Spain when Christians, Jewish people, well, people of different faiths, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity could get along, sit down and discuss topics, theories, math, all sorts of things, and everybody, got along peaceably. And that's pretty much the goal. The main goal is for, just everyone accept each other, peace and harmony, just prevail and globally. It's a great dream.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what came across on the History Channel show. And it as you work on the next book, Teresa, have you found any new information? How are you contributing to the new book?
I wish I could say that I was contributing, but I'm not. This was all on Denny. No, I mean, I've heard this stuff. I'm supporting him 100%, but he's doing all the legwork.
So, are you looking through any of the diaries for some new information? Have you found anything
in the upcoming book?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I used the diary. I've already written it, and I'm just awaiting the editor to contact me. But it has information from the diaries, and then I expanded on that to other people who were known to be related by blood and or marriage to Jesse and his family. And there's a couple of shockers in there for some people, but it's very interesting, and it also, and they weren't just, I'm trying not to give away too much, but people who were related to them, by marriage and or blood, and also including some not too, fairly recent politicians, very powerful politicians. And it just shows a link, and I'm not saying anything good or bad, I'm just stating the facts. It shows a link between Jesse, some groups, and other people. I hope that wasn't too vague.
No, not at all.
It's I can't wait to talk about it. I don't know if I'm not supposed to talk about it until they're ready to put it out in the catalog and stuff. So
okay. Well,
yeah, there's a lot of information, and it ties in. It's a much larger scale.
Well, just let us know. We'll have both of you return for
I'll
part
give you
3.
one teaser. One teaser on that would be he was related to Clement Vallandigham, who was a big player in the Knights of Golden Circle. But there's no proof that he was a part of the Knights of Golden Circle. But he was related to a big guy in the Knights of Golden Circle. So trust me, I love talking, and I want to just rattle on for hours about that. But I'm biting my tongue.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll do 2 hours on it when you're allowed to talk.
Okay. I look forward to it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What we're discussing with the diversity and accepting diversity, education, travel, meeting new people, et cetera, and foreign lands. Where do we get go from the that Novus Ordo Seclorum on the $1 bill to the New World Order and the nefarious connotations to the fraternal organization, secret societies, and
I've heard a lot of people talk about that over the years, claiming that it was a one world government, and then they tie that back to the Book of Revelation and in the end of the New Testament of the Christian Bible, saying that it's part of the end times and all that sort of thing. They claim it's satanic, and that the eye on the pyramid is the eye of Horus, who they claim is also the eye of Satan, and if you go back to churches in Europe throughout the years, there are a lot of things that they claim are evil today, which were common Christian symbols. And also like the eye, for example, it was just the eye of providence, like the eye of God. Nobody said it was the eye of God. They just said the eye of providence. It wasn't anything dark and sinister. It was just an eye. But like Novus Ordo Seclorum is just a new order for the ages, or of the ages. And it was, I mean, if you look at the founding of America, that was a whole new country. And it was a new way of thinking and with liberty and freedom. And it was, we've shaken up the world over the years, the short time we've been a nation. So I take it as meaning, it's a new way of doing things. And, I mean, it's not, we have plenty of troubles as any nation would, but we've, I think, done pretty good.
Okay. No, it's just interesting to hear the diverse views of secret societies, and Skull and Bones is not like part of it, but I think most people would agree that the New Atlantis does give people something to strive for, some kind of hope.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's so sometimes what you hear, from other commentators or hosts is different from the modern foundations that you might read in Bacon's works.
Yeah. Well, and back to the eye, I don't mean to keep talking about the eye constantly, but I remember there were some Jewish catacombs that were uncovered in Rome, and a photographer went down and took great photographs of these catacombs, and one of the designs or murals on the wall was of what they said, it was a representation of the Ark of the Covenant. And on the Ark of the Covenant, the drawing of it or the mural, it had one big eye. And I thought that was interesting. I mean, to me, that it was a religious symbol, and it wasn't it was a benign religious symbol, in my opinion. So I just wanted to put that out there. And also like the pentagram. You used to see that in ancient churches all through Europe. But now when people see it, it's a whole different connotation. It's just really, really interesting how a symbol can go through centuries as a benign symbol and then get turned into I guess conspiracy theorists grab them and they turn them into dark, sinister meanings. And the society as a whole just kind of, they don't have anything to look back at, or they don't have the time, but they hear that and they think, oh, that's evil. And it spreads like fire, and it's not evil at all.
Yeah. The Rheims Cathedral that has like one of the major stained glass windows is in the form of a pentagram.
Mm-hmm. Which cathedral was that?
Rheims.
Okay.
I might be saying the wrong one. I don't have my book in front, or my photo album in front of me.
Yeah, I see some drawings. I just looked that up. Agrippa's man inscribed in the pentagram. There's a lot of people talking about that. I've seen other, just like abandoned ancient churches in small villages in France and other places throughout Europe. I've seen photos of those, and a lot oftentimes you'll see some have pentagrams. And the description I've read was, whatever direction it was, some people claim if when it's pointing up, that's referring to, to the spirit above. When it's pointing down, it's referring to the spirit below. But you could also take that into a lot of different meanings. Every symbol, one thing I read in Morals and Dogma that I really loved about Albert Pike's writing, he was talking about how every symbol has multiple meanings. And the deeper you look, just learning the language of symbols is it's an amazing thing. Buildings, for example, angles on buildings, you can read all kinds of stuff into that. And it's anyway, I could go on that for hours, sorry. But it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of which cathedral that, and I think it's in one of Scott's books too. But this shows similar
that
to.
Also ties. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say it's similar to what Miguel Connor was talking about a couple weeks ago with just looking at the Gnostic Christians.
I found it.
What was which one? Amiens? Yeah.
Amiens.
That's it. I'm sorry. I just I forgot where I was 30 years ago. That's it. But
wait, you were there at that cathedral?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'd love to see those pictures.
Like the next day, I went down to Giverny to Monet's house. Wow. I was kind of like winding up my trip through France and flying home in a few days.
Awesome.
Wow.
Man, that would be a story. I would love to hear that. Your adventures. We need to hear your adventures.
Yeah. There's other symbols like the scallop shell, for example, on the Camino de Santiago, which runs from France down to Spain. People take the scallop shell as a Christian symbol, and it's used that way. But before, in pre-Christian times, that route was still taken by pilgrims who had different beliefs, and they used the scallop shell ties into all kinds of alchemical meanings, but it can also be represented as Venus. And then when you start digging in deeper to a lot of this stuff, Venus and Eve, share the same archetype in many ways, and it goes that leads off down a lot of other rabbit holes. But it's interesting how symbols take on a different meaning, or people attribute different meanings to them, and over the years they kind of lose, or the other meanings fade into time, but end up circling back around later on.
And that's just one of the interesting things about tonight's show is how the meanings change. What are the meanings? Dispelling myths. That's been a very informative show.
Oh yeah.
Well, I also, and you could even attribute that to the swastika that Hitler used. I mean, it had been used long before he used it, and it had no evil intentions or meanings behind it until he started using it. And that when most people in the world see that sign today, that's what they think of. They don't think of the previous meanings of that symbol. And even Native Americans, some Native Americans used a similar symbol to the swastika, which was representative of the four winds. And it's very interesting.
Yeah, and it goes back, thousands of years prior to Hitler adopting it for his symbol for Nazis.
And that's when Indiana Jones had to come in.
Yeah. There you go.
And he stopped the whole thing.
Yeah. But with your inclusion of Jesse's diary at the end of your mysterious life and fake death book of Jesse James, did you learn anything about him that you see in yourselves? Like, times may change, but I saw the video of Teresa riding the Harley with the bad biker boys. Like, is that?
That's a long story. But
are there some things that thoughts or behaviors that you see in yourself that maybe some kind of like DNA being passed on,
like genetic recall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody in the family has little examples of that, but in my opinion, our late mother was very much like Jessie.
Oh yeah, she was.
Whereas I had reading about Jesse's mother, I've gotten better about it, but I had a tendency to be a lot like his mother. She was known as being, and for a woman in her day in the frontier, it's good. Well, she was very outspoken and didn't hold back on anything she thought. She'd tell people what she thought. And when it came to politics, she was like a firebrand. I mean, she would just, and I had a tendency in the past to be a little like that. But after reading about her, and I thought, oh my God, I do the same thing. I need to quit this. But I mean, there were other tendencies, but that actually reading about the family has helped me better myself as a person. But yeah, I think Mom was a lot like Jesse. I tended to be a lot more like his mother, and Teresa. That's a good question. She looks a lot like one of Jesse's daughters. And
but I feel like I have
Teresa,
some of his.
Teresa acts a lot like Jesse. She has a lot of mannerisms that he had. Her personality can be a lot like his at times, especially if she's mad.
Yeah. Yeah. We won't go into that, though.
No. I don't want to get hurt.
Some secrets need to stay below the surface. No, but yeah, I'm with Danny. I think, I think there's a little bit of, we all in the family have a little bit of that. I don't know if it's like an adrenaline rush that we're looking for, or I don't know. Like, we just kind of, like, the fear is there, but it doesn't stop us from pursuing certain things, kind of like this story. No, but
Mom always said the family had a wild streak in them, and she blamed every gray hair she had on me at the time. But and then later on you realize, it's don't risk your life for just to risk it. And so I started putting it into more positive arenas, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to You
channel
kind of
that
have
energy
to rechannel
into
the
something
energy.
positive.
Yeah, but with the quarantine and COVID from last year, it's kind of like that. And I think I can say this for all of the world. Like, I think everyone's just going to be going crazy once everything fully opens up. I mean, it's like people are just.
That's probably when we should
animals.
Stay at home.
Yeah.
Well, you had the double lockdown with getting frozen inside for a few days over the winter.
Oh, that was terrible. Wow.
Yeah.
I
and
think it
Teresa,
was 5
one more
days
thing
without
about
water.
Teresa, she had to go to the bank.
No.
She had to go to the bank the other day. And
yeah.
she goes to the bank, and they said, you had to have a mask on to enter the bank. And she came out
weird.
and said, boy, that felt strange, wearing a mask in the bank. And she, it made her happy. So
yeah,
it was kind of funny.
So weird.
We were laughing about that.
Yeah, because that was my first time to actually go. Like when I go this whole time through the quarantine, I go through the drive-through at the bank. I haven't gone in, so it was my first time to actually go in the lobby with the mask on. I was like, this just feels all kinds of weird.
Yeah.
But it should be natural for you.
Oh, yeah, you would think.
but we definitely have a devil-may-care personality. We've had to learn great discipline throughout the years, though. Danny worded it perfectly. We just channel it into something positive, like the research. Like, we've learned to, kind of, just channel it into something that we can focus on that's positive. Well,
and growing up and aging, that helps, too. Getting older, maturing.
I'm not getting older.
Yeah, but
when
you go... But Teresa, when you go into the bank, if the teller has read your book,
they would be a little scared, probably.
Yeah, it's like, well, are you following Dr. Fauci's protocols, or is she really here to knock off the bank?
I know. Oh my gosh. Thankfully, with the mask on, they can't see who it is.
Well, there is a story about that. We went into a bank with our late mother. When we had the diary, we thought, well, we need to make sure this is a much safer place after it had been transcribed. So we took it to a safety deposit box. And we were laughing. How weird is this, putting Jesse James's diary in a safety deposit box? And, Mom told the banker, and he was visibly nervous after Mom told him about Jesse James. And we thought that was interesting. We told him, there's nothing to worry about. We're not, we're just putting this in the safety deposit box. But he literally was very nervous, started sweating, the whole thing.
Yeah, and
it just seemed odd. I guess that's a topic you don't want to joke about with them, especially. But but it just seems strange. I mean, it was a historic artifact. Historic, in a family heirloom, and we were just putting it in a safety deposit box. It made him nervous.
Yeah, and I remember one time I applied, it was a long time ago, but I applied for a job. I was looking for a job, and it was a bank in Liberty Hill, and it was right around the time when my mom had her first book published, but he was really, I didn't get hired for that job. And he brought up the book and, how I felt about our ancestors being bank robbers. And I guess it didn't dawn on me till later. I was like, oh, yeah, we're sitting here writing this book and I'm applying for a job with the bank. And, yeah, he acted really weird about it, and I didn't get the job. So that was the last bank I applied for.
Yeah.
I was like, no bank.
Yeah, you might want to change your resume a little bit.
Killed it handling money.
So funny. Yeah. I mean, he was really serious asking those questions, and I was like, wow. I mean, just because my ancestor did it didn't mean I'm going to.
Works well with ambiguity, skills in making deposit or withdrawals.
we would years later we would laugh about that. I came home and I told my mom about that interview, and she just died laughing. She couldn't get over that.
Yeah. So when you go to the bank, like you really don't need to fill out a withdrawal slip. You just tell them take however much you got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
38 million to be precise. No.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, we're doing the
8 million.
we're like looking into new forms of currency. So me and Danny have gotten really into the cryptocurrencies. Are you familiar with the cryptocurrencies, Mark?
I've heard
like
a little bit about them.
Yeah. So it's a digital form of currency, and so me and Danny have been getting into that more. So
Okay.
cash is slowly becoming obsolete, I think. So bank robbers will become obsolete.
All right, just get someone else's password and shift it over to your account, and
No
one gets shot, but it's still like bank robbery.
Yeah, it's going to be a new form of and digital bank robbers now. We're living in crazy times.
Just say it's in my DNA. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
So I can't. You can't. I can't be convicted.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But we have like about 5 minutes left or so. But maybe one quick question. It in the TV the History Channel show, they showed a old drawing of ascending to the top of the masonry pyramid, and like on the left hand side, I don't know, maybe there's 33 steps, and on the right hand side there's like 6 steps that were much larger. It's
That would be
covered
the York
the same
right
distance.
side. Mm-hmm.
What was that?
That would be the York right side with the larger but fewer steps. The side with the but they were all normal sized that's the Scottish rite.
Oh, okay. So I was just looking for an explanation for that that draw. It's like, okay, there's kind of like the balance there, but the steps had to. It kind of threw me off in interpreting what it meant, and like there are all the other, several other symbols on there. But thanks for clarifying that. I wasn't sure what.
I always liked that too. I used to have somewhere in one of my files. I have a copy of that. A large, a lot of pixels, high detail. It was in a magazine years ago, but then I found a good photo of it, and I just like keeping that. It was the the bottom is the regular lodge, the first 3 degrees, and then the from the viewer's side, it would be on your left. On your left side was the Scottish rite, and on the right side is the York rite.
Okay. No, I didn't understand the symbolism, and we're getting kind of low on time, and maybe next time we can talk about maybe some of the William Blake paintings. Those are pretty interesting as well. But with the remaining 3 minutes or so, let's kind of let everyone know how they can find your books, etc. Contact you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, our books are available anywhere books are sold. The Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure, or The Mysterious Life and Fake Death of Jesse James, which is by me and my sister, Teresa Duke. You can find the books at our publisher's website, innertraditions.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere books are found. And if you'd like if you're ever looking for us on Twitter or Facebook, we're both on there. You can look for Dan Duke, author, or you can just type that in a search window and find me. And I had to specify author because it shocked me at how many other Dan Dukes are out there. But and on Facebook, it's basically the same thing. Just look for Dan Duke, author. And you, Teresa?
Oh yeah, Facebook. Teresa Duke, author. Twitter, just Teresa Duke. I think. Oh, and Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well.
And we keep our website. I have a website, and we keep our late mother's website up because that's got most of the Jesse James information. Her website is jessewjames.com, his middle initial. What was that?
I think Teresa's also getting airport information coming in.
All right. I thought, wow. But yeah, jessewjames.com, or you can look me up. It's dandukeauthor.com. So all I've got right now. I need to revamp. I'm revamping the website, so if they don't look that great, just give me some time. I'm getting those together.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank both of you for being guests tonight, and be glad to have you back when the next book comes out.
We would love that, and we enjoyed tonight as well, Mark.
I had a great time too, and we're just about out of time, so we have a bunch of shows tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Teresa and Dan. Thanks, Barbara, for producing this, and we'll see everyone tomorrow night.